You're watching Daybreak here on the Rise News channel, and as promised, it's time to take a look at the front pages of top local and international papers. We have joining us Dr. Constance Ikoko, a Rise News analyst, social commentator, and a journalist. Good morning, Dr. Ikoko. We also have a guest analyst this morning.
Yes, a very good morning to you, Adesua and Ndi. Yes, we do have a guest this morning.
Good morning to
join us for the newspaper review. He is Eniola Akinkotu. Eniola is the chief international correspondent of the Africa Report. Welcome, Eniola.
Thank you so much for having me, Doctor.
We'll begin by looking at This Day newspaper, our sister publication. And today we'll be looking at the story. Again, military, police, NNPCL, others declare war on crude oil theft. They vow to achieve results in 3 months, and the National Assembly must stronger laws against oil theft and vandalism. The Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority seeks armed forces support to curb adulteration, product diversion. The intensified war against oil theft followed President Bola Tinubu's directives. While it's good to see a sense of urgency on this matter, given the high level of grand theft going on in the country. However, we've seen these directives before. The point then is we may have to wait for the 3 months target that they have given to themselves to see if there is a drastic change. Isn't it, Eniola?
Oh, well, you're spot on that. This is not the first time such a promise is going to be made. I can't count the number of times that the NNPC and the military have come out to say, oh, they're going to end all theft and all that. Keeps happening. And it's even more shocking if you remember the NATI report of 2 days ago, where they said between 2009 and 2020, over 119 million barrels of crude were stolen. What I didn't say in that report, sorry to digress a bit, but what I didn't say in that report is any statistics of number of people arrested, those prosecuted, yes, and those who were convicted.
Very good point.
So this is what you know, so I'm not really impressed by this. In fact, it may seem, that the guys in the oil sector, those who are, the appointees in the oil sector, that's the NNPC, NNPCL, all of them are getting jittery. That's what it looks like at this point. If you remember last week, the National Assembly invited the NNPC GMD, and who he was making a lot of assurances, making a lot of promises. And these guys in the oil sector, they are the only ones so far from the Buhari administration that remain untouched.
Right. Almost
everyone has been removed. So you can see that they're just jumping all over the place, making assurances, making promises. But it doesn't seem the political will is there to actually, stop, to tackle this menace. You had Tompolo and what's his name, this former militant, Asari Dokubo, all accusing the military of complicity. So until we see real action, I don't think there's anything to be hopeful about.
The National Assembly says it is thinking about stronger laws. It's stronger laws. We already have laws in this country. We have a lot of laws that deals with different crimes across the country. The issue is enforcement of those laws, and sometimes those that are supposed to enforce the law are involved in whatever is going on this way.
Indeed, I mean, you're right, and it's not about the laws, but the implementation, and we cannot stress this enough. For every time we say we are declaring war on crude oil theft, if we have actually, executed that war, I don't think we'll be here still talking about a war on crude oil theft. And like Mr. Kyoko just spoke about the NATI report that we discussed some days ago, I was saying the numbers were staggering, but I would have loved to see what happened in the years after the 12 years that were covered in that report, up until date. Let's even see the difference. Has it, declined? Is it, increasing? So that we even know where we are going to. But we must commend this new vigor. I mean, there's nothing wrong in being optimistic. There's nothing wrong in being ambitious. But what has happened over the years is that trust has been eroded. So when you hear public officials and security operatives speak like this, you just wait to see, okay, they've given a 3 month target, let's see how far that goes. But we must commend it that, yes, efforts, I mean, they say the first step to resolving a problem is acknowledging that it exists. So to that extent, they are acknowledging that there's a problem. And this black gold is where we all, receive, revenue, mostly, or supposedly we're supposed to be receiving most of our revenue from. As it stands today, we are not receiving so much. And we're not doing so well with the non-oil sectors at the moment. So it would be great to fix the leaking pipes,
right,
and fix all of that. But again, it seems to be aligning with what we've heard from the NNPCL recently. You know, Mr. Mele Kyari did say that the refineries are going to come on board. Not only that, Nigeria will become a net exporter by December.
Yeah.
And that's 6 months from now. So we are seeing a lot of things, you know. I'm trying to connect the dots, the pronouncements. Perhaps they know what we don't know. We'll keep our fingers crossed and wish them the best, because we really need to get this fixed.
You know, there's an agency of government that called for the military to intervene to help to curb this vandalism and all of that. You know, we have our military in civil spaces everywhere. You know, other people are thinking about demilitarizing the society. In Nigeria, it's like the military takes over civil duties. They're everywhere in the streets. I don't know which country you go to and you see the military with rifles all over the place. Indeed, does that even solve the problem? They have been in the Niger Delta for many years. They have been part of the task force to confront this problem of oil theft, but it hasn't moved the needle.
Well, let me start from the military. The Chief of Defense Staff, Christopher Musa, says this thing has been ongoing in the South for a long time. So it's not really about talking the talk. It's about walking the talk. I remember a Nigerian musician. I don't know where he is now. He's been playing for some time. China would sing and say, when poor man steals a phone or a pen, you will see him on Crime Fighters. But when the big man commits an offense, you won't get to hear anything. Over time, the talk has been that it takes people who have a huge war chest to get involved in oil bunkering and whatever has to do with oil in these areas. It's not the small guy that you see, but the people behind it. And like Eniola said, the report, I think he even said the report on 90. Have we had people arrested? And talking about 3 months from now, 3 months from now you wait. If you're waiting, there must be telltale signs that things are happening to the 3 months. And if those telltale signs are not there, 3 months will become a mirage. You're waiting for nothing. We hope that this time around they will walk the talk. But the most important thing, the lawmakers are considering laws. It's not particularly about laws. It's about the implementation of the laws. It's about getting to the root, the people that commit those offenses, and the question of sacred cows. I think that's what's happening here. Okay,
but I also wanted to just mention that for those who are asking for the military to get involved, they're already involved. We have a couple of what's it called? Operational, I don't recall the particular code name for the military operations in the Niger Delta. Is it Safe Corridor? I think Safe Corridor is the one in the northeast. But, you know, we have so many
of them
there. Yes, already involved in helping to tackle this issue. We all have the Navy, who is in charge of the waterways in Nigeria. And they have still not been able to curb this.
I think somebody.
We have private contractors doing this. We have NSCDC on board. So I think we have enough hands. What we don't have is deterrence measures.
And results.
Somebody is not being frank.
Yeah. I mean, the other day we were talking about Okwama. Was it not soldiers that went there and wiped out the place? They are in the Niger Delta. To that native report, so what we're losing is valued at $46.16 billion. That was what we've lost in the 12 years, and translated to Naira, it's 16.25 trillion Naira. That's a lot of money that could have been used in areas or sectors that we need help. Let's move on to Daily Trust. Daily Trust will be looking at the story, AFCFTA, Tinubu launches inaugural shipment to Egypt, Kenya, others. This is as part of implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. 10 companies will be exporting Nigerian products to East, Central, and North Africa. Countries with this Some of the products to be exported are shea butter, black soap, clinkers, native starch, alcoholic bitters, sanitary sets, etc. The first shipment was flagged off at the Apapa port in Lagos. You know, when I was reading the story, what came to my mind is my friend that came from Barcelona to visit me recently. And when she was leaving, she was specifically asking for black soap. So apparently the African black soap is legendary. And so they don't have much of that in Europe. So she said she wanted to buy not only black soap, honey, natural honey, shea butter, and a couple of other things. So we're able to get her black soap from one of the supermarkets, Dudu Anshu. And by the way, after that, I had to buy that Dudu Anshu and start using it. So don't
advertise for them.
Well, okay, okay.
No, don't.
Well, they've been in business for many years, Dudu Anshu, so I'm not advertising. They have been around for a while.
They've not paid us for that, so don't call them. Just call the soap.
No problem. The point is that we do have products to export. And so now that we're encouraging intra-regional exports and businesses and trade for African countries, this is a good one, Eniola.
Oh, definitely it is. It's curious, though, that Nigeria signed on to this agreement. I think it was 2020.
Yeah, it was established in 2018 and became operational, I think, in 2021. Exactly. Yeah, but we've been there from the beginning.
Well, it's good. I mean, intra-African trade is still very low. It's the lowest in the world if you look at each region. Intra-African trade is about 16%, as opposed to intra-European trade, which is about 60%. Intra-Asian trade is about 45 to 50%. So you see that we're still, yeah, baby steps, but still a step in the right direction. Let me add that, you know, the free movement aspect too needs to be looked at. Remember Dangote said 2 months ago that he needs about 35 visas to travel within Africa. If Dangote, who is the richest on the continent, has to face that, imagine what the average people go through. So yes, while it's good, what started, I hope that it leads to, you know, greater developments too, such as free, easier movement of people.
I mean, this is a long-term project. It is a grand vision aimed at, of course, not only making business procedures simple, they also want to make sure that customs procedures are easier for people to move around goods and services. And like you said, movement of people as well. I think from the data that we have, this is going to connect 1.3 billion people in Africa. That's our population across 55 countries. And the GDP is valued at $3.4 trillion. The African Continental Free Trade Area is going to be the largest free trade area in the world if we are able to eventually achieve everything that we've put in place here. It will take time, Adesua.
Indeed, it will take time, but the step, we've initiated it, so we need to follow through. And I think that there are some factors that undermine, you know, the success of this AfCFTA. For instance, we do know that African countries do not trade with themselves. We don't trade with ourselves enough. We don't, you know, visit ourselves enough, because if you even look at travels, Africans prefer to travel outside of their shores than within the continent.
But
a few countries.
And that's why that's not for the middle and the upper class. Ordinary people just go across the borders through buses and on feet.
By nature,
yeah, we've been doing that for centuries, actually.
But by nature and evolution, man likes to move. So how you move is now the problem, whether as low class, middle class, or upper class. But man likes to move. And when I say man, I mean humans. So as I was saying, so we've seen a situation where African countries trade with external parties, and this is by agreements that they have signed. And that's why in recent times you've seen some moves and some measures to ensure that these bilateral agreements with other parties does not undermine this, what the AfCFTA is supposed to do, which is to boost, you know, economic activities on the continent, within the countries. For instance, you have countries that trade with the US, and the US rather trade with those few certain countries on the continent. You also have those who we trade with, those in Northern Africa alone, and not with the West and Southern Africa. So all of this is what Africa needs to look at. Then we need to improve our connectivity, transportation. What is the connectivity in Africa? Mr. Kiko spoke about the visas. But apart from the visas, how connected really is Africa?
Transport, roads, rail.
Exactly. So, and all of these are also imbibed in the agreement, but we haven't seen much of that. And you also know that these countries are battling with economic survival. So every country now, and what we are seeing is a rise of nationalism.
Right.
Everybody wants to put themselves first. And I don't think a lot is going into the AFCFTA as we speak. But it's a good move to see that now we are exporting. What exactly are we exporting to Egypt?
Shea butter, clinkers, native starch,
and we'll hope to see more. We'll hope to see more of that.
To use in this statement, you always use this. Rome was not built in a day.
Yes.
Take it away, Ndi.
Have I don't remember saying that. Okay.
Yeah, well, you always say that. You forgot.
Really?
You always say that.
Oh, really?
Yes,
you do. Or I say, journey of 1,000 miles begins to
you also say that.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, I just read something from this day a while ago on IMF downgrading Nigeria's economic growth to 3.1%. because of lack of activities, which of course will be economic activities. Even though Shomula says the world shouldn't be telling us, IMF should be telling us who we are or what we do, we should get back home and say who we are and all that. And then in that report, it says it also downgraded sub-Saharan Africa generally, their growth. Why? Because of what is happening in Nigeria. And so this will help boost trade, fine and good. I'm actually wondering how are the 10 companies selected, because it says 10 companies will import these products. You know, that's one. And then the fact that you have to also think about how, I just watched a report on the professional league where the coach was saying Rangers is going to play international and it's no longer just Enugu Rangers International, but now Nigeria is being represented. Therefore, the need for the whole country to come on board and help Nigeria. So there's a need now.
You can't help but bring in football, right?
Oh, well, I love football.
Yes.
I love football.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but I'm bringing it in because if these companies, 10 companies, I don't know why 10, why it couldn't be more.
No, but this is a start, right?
Okay, yeah, okay, fine. What's the criteria? But what I'm going to is that there's a need now to get behind them. Because Nigeria is being represented here, get behind them, whatever way you're going to do it, to boost them, boost their production in terms of what is happening.
Ensure standards, so we don't see a situation where we are recalling products.
Exactly, and I was going to come to that, recalling, you know, and you're like, you know, coming here because when you look at the trade between us or between the continent and European countries, they always reject our products. We might as well just do it within ourselves.
Exactly. Well, I think NAFDAC said they're looking into that. I had an interview with MD of NEBSA as well. Said, look, it's part of the reforms that they are doing too, especially when it comes to consumables, you know, like this, you know, beans and all that. And it's about agricultural practices, for instance, where, you know, you use excessive pesticides and which end up contaminating the produce. So, yes, I think you're very right in this regard. All the regulatory agencies, from Standards Organization of Nigeria to NAFDAC and all the other ones involved, I think they've created some sort of a one-stop shop at the port where they're, you know, doing everything internally to make sure that, you know, this are up to global standard.
You know, I heard so much about Ghanaian yam recently in a report, and if you look at the statistics and reports, we've seen a couple of Nigerian yams returned or rejected from Europe because of what Eniola has highlighted. And I read this report that talks about how Ghanaian yam is so acceptable. And you know, I look forward to eating Ghanaian yam just to see the difference. Like, what exactly is it about Ghanaian yam that makes it so different from our Benue yam or Abuja yam, sweet yam here?
And they're just varieties of different crops and seeds, yeah. Let's move on to Punch newspaper. Punch this morning will be looking at the story, local government autonomy. 13 states rush to hold local councils. Bauchi fixes poll for August 19, Kogi October 9. Jigawa, Imo, Anambra, Abia, Katsina, Kebbi, Benue set for exercise. Unbelievable, unbelievable panel. They do know how to conduct elections, but they chose not to. They prefer to have caretaker committees That was utter disdain for the law, wasn't it, Aniola?
Oh, certainly. Since the Constitution mandates that they should have elections, I think it's every 3 years. So until that threat of their funds being withheld was made, of course, they didn't want to take any action. But, well, I know they will say that a step of, what's it, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. But you look at these are sham elections most of them have been holding. Look at Adamawa, look at Delta State over the weekend. Landslide. Not a single seat won by the opposition. Yeah. In fact, since 1999, that's how it has been. Except there was just one, what's it called now, one exception, which was the Kaduna State, I think some 6 years ago, when El Rufai introduced electronic voting. So I think just about 4 of the local governments went to the opposition. Besides that, it's always a landslide all the time. So yes, well, the Supreme Court order has been obeyed, but it doesn't really leave much for one to be excited over.
Right. Let's quickly go to another story on the Punch. Do you have something to say?
Hey, I wanted to chip in just a little thing. This is it's appalling. Why is it appalling? It's appalling because it takes consequence. Shego was talking about it the other day. Consequence for them to begin to do the right thing. It's appalling. Why can't we just do the right thing?
Yeah, why can't we just do the right thing? Let's look at Punch again. There's a story. Applicants decry 640,000 naira UAE visa fee hike. The visa fee was increased by a whopping 300%. And I guess, we have to stay home.
Yeah, that's
or retaliate.
That's
this one. What are your reflections on that? Stay home and spend your money in Nigeria, or what?
It's heartbreaking. I think that we have waited for this for, well, maybe not all of us, but we had looked forward to this diplomatic, you might not call it diplomatic route, but I mean, just a blanket visa ban on Nigerians for no apparent reason beyond maybe a few Nigerians, misbehaving on their home soil, and perhaps economic matters because their airlines were being owed. And so a blanket visa ban was placed on Nigerians. But there was also the issue of COVID, which really didn't make sense because just in Ghana here, people were traveling to United Arab Emirates for, going freely. When I say freely, I mean they paid, but you understand that there were no hurdles, for them, and there were no blanket visa bans. And then this happens over 2 years after, and then you have this hike, 640,000 naira exclusive of 7.5% VAT. So by the time you add the 7.5% VAT, you're looking at about 688,000 there, about my math may be wrong. And that's not only it. You have to have a $10,000 sitting in an account for 6 months that you haven't touched. All of this is to ensure that Nigerians who travel have the means to travel, will not stay there, will come back. There are many fronts to this story. One, it reflects of what our nation stands, what we are seen as by the international community. It also reflects on what a few Nigerians go abroad to do, using the name and using our passports.
Although we cannot tar everyone with the same brush.
No,
other countries also do a lot of stuff.
Which I decried in my opening statement that, it's a blanket visa ban, which should not be. And there are those who have also raised questions about this supposed criteria that you have to travel, you have to go through to now travel to the United Arab Emirates. I think we need more explanation from the government. Let them tell us what exactly is going on. Why should we have to pay so much? And why is this criteria now put in place? They haven't given us details of the agreement. The Minister of Information just told us that the Nigerian government and the UAE government reached an agreement. And then we saw this form. We need to have details of what the agreement was.
That's what, do we really need an explanation? Or
yes, I think we
just
deserve
need
it.
to fix our country.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
We can fix our country, but we do need explanation.
That's where I was going to go to. Just like you said at the beginning, and I nodded my head, they're simply telling you, stay home. Don't come to our country. We don't need you. Now, when we discussed this some time ago, the question was, is it just for fun Is it for tourism? If it's for business, then you can make foreign exchange for the country. $640,000. It used to be £100, which at the ongoing rate is $155,500 to pay. And it doesn't stop there. It's not refundable.
It is a type of restriction.
Yeah, it's not refundable. And in fact, the money goes because you have 14 days window, which from what you have to go through, you won't meet the 14 days. And so this also behooves on the country to begin to build what you're going to. People built it. Both the leaders and the people have to really, we even have Obudu, that is, you go to Taraba, we have to start thinking about ours, our own, making our own lovely. The place you're going to, somebody built it. I'm not saying if you want to travel, you should not travel. But the point is, both the leaders, the citizens, we have to really start thinking about us, how to make our country better. This is not about making America
that's
better.
why you were right when you said it's a reflection of how people view us. You understand? It is a true reflection, and that gives you food for thought, doesn't it, Eniola?
Oh, certainly. But I don't think Nigerians are the only ones. I'm not even saying all Nigerians do it, but I don't even think Nigerians are the only ones who are not of good character in the UAE.
Exactly.
I've been there before. A lot of the sex workers I see there standing on the road are Ethiopians. And I don't see them being treated this way.
And there's another thing.
It's a great gift, more or less. This is what they're trying to, they're celebrating it as some sort of achievement, but it's a great gift. I don't know any country in the world that any Nigerian needs to apply to that the cost is about 680,000, and that's verification fee. Who is even doing the verification? Is it that it's Nigerian officials that are going to do it? Because I agree with that this way. We need more clarity on this thing. Mr. Festus Keyamo was with the ambassador to UAE, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. He took a picture and he said, oh, they're fine-tuning the agreement and all that. It's good to see this agreement because the cost is just too high. It's astronomical, 680,000, and there's no guarantee you will even be given the visa.
No, you're not.
So that, and say $10,000 you must have in your account. How many Americans?
For 6 months.
How many Americans have $10,000 in their account?
That's
Americans.
a good question.
How many they have? Most Americans live on credit, on debt. So how many have that amount to keep in their account for 6 months? It makes no sense at all.
Yeah, on that you've said. You see, another thing I was just thinking as you were talking is that I think there's a way that the world treats Nigerians. They feel that
Africans.
Okay, Africa, but particularly Nigerians. They feel that we can pay, that we are willing to, go ahead, So because of that, they feel at liberty to place any price or premium that Nigerians are going to pay. I think we should think about that too, because nobody seems to be complaining or nobody seems to be walking around it, to stop it. So they feel, look, put it there, it's Nigeria, they will pay it because they are hungry, they want to do it and all that. I think that's a big challenge.
Well, if this is a structured restriction that has come in through the back door, then Nigeria has to also take a stand in reciprocity. Well, let's take a quick break. When we return on Daybreak, we'll still be reviewing top international and local papers for you. Stay with us.
All right, glad to have you back. It's still Daybreak. We're coming to you live from the Federal Capital Territory here in Abuja. We're still discussing the papers, both local and international. We still have Constance here and Eniola. Constance.
Yes, let's look at one more Nigerian story before we see what's happening in the international scene for you. We're going to be looking at Daily Trust. Daily Trust PDP governors meet in Enugu to discuss NWC Rivers issues. The 13 governors elected on the platform of the party will also discuss strategies to confront party problems and reposition the party. Upcoming Edo and Ondo states as well, the elections there, and local government autonomy will be discussed. I mean, the PDP, the opposition party that never was. A lot of people think, believe that the party is in tatters. It's a huge disappointment to many Nigerians that it hasn't lived up to what they were expecting, Eniola.
Oh, certainly. And I don't even know what they want to discuss, because there's like two separate court judgments. One barring the PDP from removing their acting chairman,
national chairman,
that's Omar Damagum.
Yes.
And there was another one again yesterday in Rivers State, barring any sort of Congress, because their Congresses are supposed to begin in the next couple of days or next couple of weeks. So I don't really know what they're trying to, what they want to discuss there. They can't discipline anyone. Wike is there still doing his thing. So I don't know what the party plans on doing. And these elections even look so dicey for them now. Look at Edo State, where a court has also sacked the, although they've gone to the appeal court, but the court has sacked Aswe Godalo, their candidate. And in that same state, the resident electoral commissioner is a former special advisor to Wike. You know, so I don't know what the PDP is doing as an opposition party. I don't know what they want to discuss there, because there's so many court judgments barring them from doing anything, from moving forward.
Yeah, Anela, I understand your confusion. I mean, this is what happens when a party decides to condone indiscipline within its ranks and refuses to change its old ways and refuses to infuse new energy, fresh perspectives. That has been the burden of the PDP, Adeswa. Indeed.
The PDP is in fights with itself, against itself, for itself. They're just a scattered bunch. They haven't lived up to an opposition. What's that saying about, you know, being bad at being an opposition? Perhaps they did better even in power than they're doing as an opposition, as the major opposition in Nigeria.
Isn't that the same with all parties? Once they're out of power, it's difficult for them to be a viral opposition because they have limited funds.
Is it really about the funding? Perhaps maybe funding plays a role, but beyond funding, how much of polity do we see them, you know, play? Once in a while, we hear from a governor or two. Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the party in 2023, you know, continues to use social media platforms to air his views, but hasn't been seen much around, you know. But he's been active. We have to give him that since the last election. But beyond that, what does the PDP bring to the table? It looks like they've been kicked out and left out, you know, in the cold. And that's the perception they've been giving to Nigerians in so many states. I mean, they have rivers to deal with. They have, what's that other states now that they have issues? Edo. The Edo elections coming up, you know, they have a lot going on for them. And they don't seem to be a united front.
They're not a united
exactly.
front.
They don't seem to be a united front. Expectations are high for the PDP, but I don't think that they have really lived up to those expectations from
a lot to chew there. Ndi, let me bring you onto the international stories. Let's look at Rwanda. There is a story on Rwanda, but we have it in Daily Trust again, if we can pull that up. Rwanda's Kagame wins fourth term with 99% of the votes. I mean, no surprises at all here. He was going to have a landslide victory. He is a strong man of Rwandan politics and will probably be a life president if he wants to.
24 years. And then another, 4 years? You wonder, is Kagame the only one in the country? And then how does one get to win 99%
yes.
of the votes, no matter how good you are? In fact, some people will even hate you because you're laughing. So no matter how good you are, so the whole election system seems somehow, I mean, there's talk that, yes, Kagame is doing good and he's come on board, he's cancelled everything that had to do with Hutsi and Tutsi. You don't find it in when you're filling forms or that.
Yes.
No ethnicity.
He has done well, yes.
Yeah, all that. But then it also begs the question, how does one stay for 24 years and you're gunning? Don't you have a protege? I mean, don't you think that it might just be too long? I mean, you don't continue to eat. I cooked obona and I told you I know how to cook. Yeah.
Yes, come again with his food.
I cooked obona and what's it, okra. So you can't. Maybe next time I'm going to cook or something. You can't continue to eat one type of soup, you know. So, and winning 99%. Even if you're doing quite good, it's neither here nor there for me. That's the way I look at it.
We need an invite to this your cooking session.
I have told you.
Your daybreak team. We need to storm your house and have some good. You have to. You have no choice. I'm giving you a mandate. You have no choice. Okay, but you know, still on Kagame. Let's bring you in here. I mean, counter Kagame at your peril. There is no opposition there. Yes, he's doing a brilliant job with Rwanda. But in this kind of cases, when that big man, when that strong man, you know, dies or leaves power, most times such countries collapse.
Vacuum is created.
Yeah, such countries collapse. I don't know what's going to happen in Rwanda, but it's interesting to see how he has a firm grip on the country. Oh,
yes, it sort of reminds me of Gaddafi, although he's more democratic than Gaddafi. But you know, in a way, too, you know, after Gaddafi was forcefully removed by the West.
Wrongly too.
No, but that's a different one because
I'm saying,
I've already admitted
it. You know, that it's different. But you can see that when a society or a country is built around somebody, it's very, very dangerous. When you don't have a succession plan, it's very dangerous. I was in Rwanda 3 months ago. I mean, the guy is doing fantastically well. Crime rate is very low and all that. You know, there's a lot, and that country is not even resource rich. Apart from gemstones and a few others, they don't really have much. But you see how organized the country is, how clean it is, you know. So I think he's done, and in Rwanda, universal health coverage is about 90%. So
it was almost like Libya. You know,
it's about 90%.
People had a good life.
The WHO has honored him so many times. I was in Geneva not too long ago. He was sort of like the ambassador. You know, the way they were showering encomiums on him. And under him, Rwanda has been able to meet a lot of the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, especially in the area of women. Women in governance. See that Rwanda has the highest, I think the highest rate in Africa.
They do.
So he's been able to meet a lot of it. But, I mean, one of the, I think it was Obama, when he was speaking at Kenya some years ago, who said that, look, no matter how good you are, you shouldn't be so good that you become the only person in your country who's worthy enough to lead that country. If you're the only one, that means you failed.
Right.
That's what Obama said then.
Well, let's look at another story that is connected to Rwanda as well. Daily Express, can we pull that up? Daily Express, so how exactly will you stop the boats, Sakir? This is a big question that the British people are asking the new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. The story says that the Labour, you know, lacks a plan to halt the migrant boats that are coming to the UK, and they call it a Christmas gift to them, you know, because there's going to continue. Majority of Britons, in a poll about a week ago, feel that the Labour will fail in this particular issue. They believe that Labour will not be able to tackle this major challenge, but other policy challenges, they'll be able to do that. I mean, migrant boat crossings into the UK and the whole of Europe is a hot button topic. During the campaign, the Tories tried to use it against Labour, but they weren't quite able to make that dent. And then, of course, on the first day that he came into office, Keir Starmer cancelled that deal that they had with Rwanda to deport illegal migrants to Rwanda. And he said, you know, that is dead. At the same time, people feel, you know, Britons were like, yes, that's a good thing to cancel the deal, but Labour, you're not going to be able to do this for us at this one.
You know, only Keir Starmer will answer this question. He avoided during the campaigns building up to the elections because he came into office on the platform of change, including changing everything that the Conservatives have done in the last 14 years. So Keir Starmer has this big question to answer. Those planes never went to Rwanda. They did not take off.
No, there was one. They did just one drop. Yes, they did drop some. Yes,
a plane or one individual. You know, so Keir Starmer has this question to answer. He's avoided it, but he can't avoid it for so long because those boats keep going. Those small boats keep arriving at the shores of the UK and Europe in general. And I just wanted to, you know, piggyback to Rwanda. That Paul Kagame is, you can say anything about him, but he's genuinely loved and respected in his country, especially because of the role he played in ending the genocide. I mean, the lowest percentage Paul Kagame has gotten in his election history is 93%. In the last election, he got 99%. Where two other candidates got. Imagine the other two candidates in the election sharing 1%. So no, he is truly loved in his country.
Yeah, but not at 99%. For we know that one of the women. I mean, they stopped one of the ladies that were.
Yes, and that's where I was going to. That apart from genuinely being loved by his people because of what he has done so far for them, there's also the question about silencing dissent in the country. So Paul Kagame is allergic to anything that is
that is not Paul Kagame.
That is not Paul Kagame. So he's very hands-on on criticism. In fact, all the way in South Africa, they are able to arrest those who criticize Paul Kagame. That's how bad he can go. Wow. But there are issues as fantastic as we can paint Rwanda. There are issues on ground. Recently, I mean, he's having to deal with DRC, but he's not mincing words.
Oh, don't even start with DRC. no. What he's doing in DRC, the allegations against Paul Kagame in DRC, the incursions, the sponsoring of rebels
are terrible.
The African countries shouldn't be doing this to one another.
And that is why some critics, blamed the conservatives for even thinking of going into an agreement to send back migrants to Rwanda because of the human rights history of the country. So Paul Kagame is back. Let's see how long he will go. I mean, 66 years, still in power, he looks strong. He says democracy is not perfect. He's cited examples around the world, including the US, Ukraine. He's asking what's going on there if they have democracy. But my problem really when I look at Rwanda is what sort of governance, what system of government is going on in that country? Well, is it really democracy?
Well,
this issue of his popularity. I mean, Mandela was very popular when he assumed power in the early 90s in South Africa. He just come out from prison, 27 years and all that. He could have stayed an extra term if he wanted. If he wanted to amend the constitution to give himself lifetime presidency, the way his peers on the African continent have been doing,
it would have been accepted.
Have been accepted, but I mean, you cannot build a country around yourself.
Strong man, no strong institutions.
Right. Well,
that
DRC thing is a sore point. African countries shouldn't be doing that to other African countries. Anyway, let's take our last story. Financial Times. Trump's choice of Vance as deputy fuels European fears for security ties. Isolationist named as running mate. Ukraine aid cast into doubt. Tariffs pose economic threat. There's always been the fear that Trump will reduce the transatlantic ties between Europe and America with his America First policy. The thinking is that Trump believes that U.S. security guarantees to Europe makes them a bit lazy and unable and unwilling to take care of their own security. And so now he has a vice president as a hardliner, and they're thinking, man, this is going to be very extremist. They truly fear. And there have been quotes that Europeans said this is going to be a dark period for Europe if Trump wins the election, Eniola.
Well, I started watching CNN last night, and Democrats, even a few Republicans too, have expressed their reservations about J.D. Vance. Now, Trump is, he presents himself as a right-wing nationalist. They say he just does that to, just stir up his base and all that. But that Vance is an ideological right-wing nationalist. And if you look at the past utterances he has made, there was one he said about the UK not long ago, where he said the UK is an Islamist country with that has nuclear weapons.
I don't understand.
So, I mean, yesterday, a former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, visited Trump, where he tweeted that, I've been able to get assurances of Trump. He's one of the closest to Trump. He said, I've been able to get assurances from Trump that Europe is going to be safe under his watch and all that. You had Liz Truss also attending the Republican convention too. All of them just trying to get assurances from Trump.
And build that friendship.
Yes. Because this guy, what he said about Ukraine as well too, he said that, oh, that they want to cut funding to Ukraine. Although Trump is saying, oh, it's just election, you know, I think that's the way they're painting it, that it's just election rhetoric. But
the geopolitics is going to be
totally going
different.
To change.
It's going to change.
And his first term, Trump's first term too, he cut funding to, so he ended funding to WHO because he got angry with WHO during the height of COVID-19 pandemic. And he cut funding to WHO. And the US was the biggest donor to the WHO. He cut funding to NATO as well. So, yes, you know, it's good to look inward. I know America first and
when
all
it comes to NATO, he wanted the Europeans to step up in their own contributions, which was fair.
Which is fair anyway. Yes. But you saw how it left Europe very vulnerable. Yes, it left Europe very, very vulnerable.
Now, this guy, even though, I mean, what beats me really is the transition. And then it begs the question, it enhances the talk about politics is just about interest. This guy called Trump a moral disaster. This guy said Trump is a Hitler.
That's Vance?
Yes.
Yes.
Vance. And now he's supporting Trump. It beats me on the one hand. He actually said U.S. aid for Ukraine is unnecessary. That's the way he put it. I mean, one can argue the fact that he's just a vice. You know, that the buck stops at Trump's table. But then that's the fear. When you have this kind of rhetoric coming from, he's only 39.
He is young.
A young man like that.
So he has a long political future.
It's dangerous, you know.
Well,
so that's the fear.
You might say it's dangerous to the red-haired Americans. You know, this is what they want for their country. Apparently, as you can see, everything that is happening, we're moving to a multipolar world. America, the empire, is in decline. And this is part of the things that will probably precipitate its decline. It's going to be here for everyone to watch. There are other powers launching themselves, you know, globally. And, you know, part of the concerns of Europe is that this bolsters Russia, actually, you know, to continue its rampage in military efforts and interventions across the continent at this one.
Well, you know, when President Joe Biden said that Vance is just a clone of Trump, I think, I mean, we are beginning to see what exactly he meant. Vance had an interview recently, and he also didn't mince words in his hard stance on the issue of Ukraine. He feels that when it comes to Ukraine, it's not really America's problem. He feels that Ukraine should not think that Russia, it will have the same borderlines before this war, and so should be prepared for the outcomes. He feels that the most challenging problem for America at this point is China. And that's Vance for you. He feels China is the competitor. China is one we need to put in check. Ukraine can sort itself out. We've also heard from Donald Trump in the past when it comes to NATO funding, and even Ukraine in particular. Remember, he says every time he called President Vladimir Zelensky the best salesman in the world, because he says every time he comes to the US, he lives with money. He lives with a particular sum of money that nobody else does it but Zelensky. So he's the best salesman in the world. So his stance also has always been that he's not against NATO, but people need to step up to pay, you know, their own dues. And that's what we see. And then Boris Johnson telling us that he had a fruitful discussion with Donald Trump. Actually, in his words, he says he discussed Ukraine at length, and that Trump says he will give strong and decisive leadership necessary to democracy against aggression. Now, what that means is left for you to interpret. What is democracy and what is aggression? Is that Trump saying that Russia needs to step back and he will fight for Ukraine? Is left to interpretation.
Well, we know
but that's what's going to be.
We know he supports Putin, so I mean, he just read that. I mean, and the cry against Trump has always been, he's won. In fact, Trump is called a dictator in a system that doesn't tolerate a dictator. Particularly when you think about the judgment where immunity is being granted to a president willy-nilly, anything goes.
We have barely a minute, Eniola. You see, this has not only political implications, but economic implications as well. That's what the Europeans are concerned about. Trump is not only about the politics. America has to grow economically, and he doesn't mind doing anything to get them back there. Although Joe Biden has been doing well economic-wise.
He's been
Oh,
doing
yes, the inflation rate has dropped significantly. Unemployment is also low. I think Biden's main problem is that they really believe that he has age-related dementia. That's what's really working against him. And his standing in the polls started to decline after that debate that he had with Trump,
Right.
where Trump floored him. And of course, it's too late for him to be replaced too. So
Yeah.
Now, when they say Trump flawed him, Trump lied through his teeth almost all through that,
Right.
that
but
debate.
it was also about Biden's
So I wonder what
courage,
the
his
flow
demeanor
is
as well.
really. And
Well-
then he was even dodging questions.
Yes,
Always
he was.
the anchors will come back to him about 3 times before he answers. So when
Biden was
when-
incoherent, and
when
then
you say he flawed
he
him,
couldn't complete his
I'm looking at,
sentences.
do you want a president that lies all through?
No, but
that
even-
can't take
All
up
right,
questions?
all right.
But in
That's
recent
what-
days,
what-
But that's
but
for
in recent
Americans to
days,
decide.
I know,
thankfully.
I know. I'm
It's
just
for
being
Americans to
careful, so I
decide.
just wanted
Thankfully.
to add that.
But I
in.
think that my
Okay.
final point really is the U.S. The world is so interconnected.
We're out of time.
The world is so interconnected
All right.
that the U.S. cannot think that what happens in Russia and Ukraine is not their problem.
Right.
All right, and we'll call it a day. Thank you, Anila. Thank you, Constance. That's it on Daybreak this morning on the Paper Review. I am Nt Amogo. Thanking you for watching. Next is The Morning Show.
Thank you so much for watching. I am Adesola Omoruan. Good morning.